When Formula One rules change as much as they have done this season, there are always some questionable parts added to the cars. Everyone is trying to push the boundaries of what is and isn't illegal. Sometimes these boundaries get pushed too far, and a team gets told by the FIA that they need to change a car part. Surprisingly, so far this season, no team has been investigated for any parts. But we think we might have found something that definitely needs looking at. Let's take a look at Ferrari's latest questionable car part. This won't be the first time that Ferrari have included some questionable parts in their car. In 2019, Ferrari got caught in a whirlwind of controversy over their engine. At the time, they were competitive against the all-conquering Mercedes of the turbo hybrid era, something that no one had really done before. This was all thanks to the Ferrari power unit at the time, but there were doubts over whether the engine was using fuel legally. At the time, it was Red Bull who filed a formal complaint to the FIA. An investigation happened, and eventually the FIA concluded that the power unit was not legal, but it wasn't illegal either. Yeah, we know, that really cleared up the issue, didn't it? Nothing else was ever said by the FIA, but after the investigation was over, Ferrari were suddenly much slower, as were their customer teams Haas and Alfa Romeo. It was obvious that something had happened, but no one was saying anything until Mika Salo, who is a former F1 driver and former FIA commissioner, let slip some info on a Twitch stream. He said that the Ferrari engines were forced to use less fuel during the remaining races of the season. Ferrari went from competing with Mercedes for the title that year to finishing 235 points behind them. They got caught again in the first half of 2021, when 3 teams were sanctioned for having illegal parts on their car, all of them for the same thing as well. Video footage of Red Bull's rear wing tilting back at high speeds in Barcelona got Mercedes angry, with Lewis Hamilton quick to draw attention to the bendy wing on the RB16B. And thus, the can of worms was opened. Ferrari and Alfa Romeo also admitted to introducing aeroelasticity into their rear wings. Red Bull team boss Christian Horner, who is known to be a bit of a detective, has been through multiple scuffles over flexing wings during his tenure in charge of the squad. In response to Hamilton pointing out the Red Bull flexi wing, Horner drew attention to Mercedes' front wing, which also appeared to flex downwards towards the ground, and suggested the Silver Arrow's complaints were rooted in hypocrisy. Well, it seems like we might be on the cusp of another he said, she said in the F1 paddock.
Well, right now it's a he said, she said.
Footage of Carlos Sainz's front wing during Q2 at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix has recently come to light. And to be honest, the wing looks about as stable as my 95-year-old grandmother. As Carlos Sainz accelerates through the high-speed Jeddah circuit, the outside flaps of his front wing can be seen flexing. Wings that flex are nothing new to Formula One. In fact, they have their very own unimaginative name, flexi wings. But what are flexi wings, and why would Ferrari want their car to deform at high speeds? This is going to get a little sciencey, but stick with me. It's really interesting and could have a huge effect on the World Championship. Flexi wings are wings that flex. That should be pretty obvious from the name. But strictly speaking, all wings flex as it's impossible to achieve infinite stiffness. But some do so more than others. In Formula One terms, this is usually shown by a tilting action on parts of the wing. At speed, the front and rear wings produce more drag as the velocity of the car increases. In mathematical terms, the square of the velocity determines the drag force, as you can clearly see from the following equation. Drag force equals coefficient of drag times the frontal area times air density times velocity squared divided by 2.
This is difficult for you.
Actually, that wasn't very clear, so let's make it simpler. As speed increases, the force pulling the car back increases exponentially. This means the faster you go, the harder it is to accelerate. It's why all cars have a top speed. At some point, you just don't have enough power to push past the drag the car is creating. At high-speed circuits like Monza, teams use skinny wings to decrease the drag their car is creating. But at slower circuits, you need the full size of the front and rear wings to generate downforce in the corners. By tilting the wing back at speed, you reduce the overall frontal area of the wing, and the car creates less drag, therefore it goes faster. This is exactly what DRS does for F1 cars. The truth is that all teams would love to have infinitely flexing wings on their F1 cars, as the front and rear wings could theoretically flatten out and massively reduce drag on the fastest sections of a circuit. But under grounds of safety, they simply cannot do so. The FIA does have tests to ensure that wings do not flex during scrutineering, with front wings being subjected to load tests and rear wings being subjected to pullback tests, which are described in the technical regulations under Article 3.9 of the FIA rulebook. The study of aerodynamics in F1 is often considered to be the same as aerospace, but turned upside down because many of the same principles of flying a plane apply to F1 cars as well. Obviously, F1 cars are meant to stick to the road, not fly though. They also share many of the same problems though. Aeroplane wings flex very slightly because the structure must be a trade-off between rigidity and weight. Materials with a high torsion strength are often heavy, and the same is true of an F1 car. F1 wings today are produced from carbon fiber and often use a low-density core such as foam to provide further rigidity. This makes them both light and rigid, which is what you want from your F1 car. But the same is true that the more weight you add, for example using further plies of carbon fiber, the more rigid it becomes. Therefore, the trade-off still exists. But if a wing is too light, then it will likely lose strength. Under load, this means the wing could either break through contact with another car or through effects developed by aeroelasticity. Aeroelasticity is its own scientific field, and although elasticity is desirable for some applications, it leaves a wing or a structure exposed to a phenomenon called flutter. If an F1 wing flutters, this means it produces a very unpredictable level of downforce, which can fluctuate between extreme values. As such, if a driver is piloting a car with that unpredictability, there will undoubtedly be instances where they have a very low level of downforce in braking for a corner. This can result in a particularly nasty crash if they can't get the car stopped in time. It isn't just the unpredictability that's dangerous though. Flutter can get so violent that it can tear the wing apart in extreme cases. By increasing rigidity, that can be avoided. So now you know why flexi wings are a no-go for Formula 1. Driver safety is always the paramount concern for the governing body, and rightly so. But does the Ferrari Wing actually contravene any of the FIA regulations? Well, let's take another look at the footage and you can tell me what you think. The wing is definitely flexing back to reduce the front-facing surface area. That effect is definitely going to reduce the drag the car creates, which we now know will allow them to go faster. You can even see how the outside flap is specifically separate from the inside flap on top of the wing. That inside flap isn't moving at all. I don't know about you, but it looks a bit intentional to me. If the Ferrari Wing does come under investigation and is found to be flexing, then they will have to stop it from flexing before they can race with it. There will undoubtedly be a cost to this, and with the reduced cost cap, that's gonna hurt. But safety of the drivers has to be the forefront of car design, so if they did it on purpose, they kinda deserve what's coming for them. Teams will always try to push the limits of what is allowed, but when the FIA has put rules in place for the safety of drivers, those rules need to be followed to the letter of the law. Carlos Sainz's wing on his Ferrari in Saudi Arabia definitely looks like it might be operating outside the law. We'll have to wait and see if the FIA decides to take an interest or not, but in our unbiased opinion, it's definitely worth a look at. What do you think then? Are Ferrari in trouble, or does that wing look legal to you? Let us know in the comments below, and make sure to hit the notification button and give us a like while you're there. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.